Hello, everyone. Welcome to our session today. This is going to be about embedding new channels and creating innovative customer experiences inside Salesforce with Vonage. My name is Amanda Cavallaro, and I'm a developer advocate here at Vonage. We'd really like to connect you and make this workshop as interactive as possible. So if you would like to start now with a quick icebreaker, just letting us know where you're joining from, may it be a city, a country, and also to test here if you see the chat. So that's going to be our way of communicating throughout this session. So if you have any questions or any comments, suggestions, anything, we're here and we are listening to you. I'll talk a little bit about Vonage, and after I give this quick intro, I'm going to bring our main speaker here to stage. So I'm also keeping an eye here on the chat. So if you'd like to say anything, I'm listening to you. I can read you. So Vonage has everything you need to build connected applications with our APIs for voice, video, messaging, and so much more. Whether you want to make and receive phone calls, reach users across multiple platforms, we've got you covered. You can also easily integrate with social chat apps such as Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, Viber. We also have built-in app for voice and messaging. We have experiences on mobile and web. We also have different APIs. We have some of our use case APIs, our management APIs, and everything is available in a number of SDK, software development kits. They are available in different programming languages. My favorite is JavaScript. Let me know yours in the chat as well if you'd like to share with us. And yeah, I'm really interested to know which ones you're interested. And we'd also love to connect with you on social media. So whenever you have any questions about Vonage or you'd like to share the projects that you're working on, we have our website, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, blog, LinkedIn, email. So we're definitely there for you. And before I give the stage to Marc, we have our main speaker coming now. Marc is our customer solution architect at Vonage, and he'll present embedding new channels and creating innovative customer experiences inside Salesforce with Vonage. And for this workshop, we are giving away a coupon of 10 euros that you can redeem it on our Vonage dashboard, and I'll add all the links needed for that in the chat for you in a little while. So I'll start adding these links now while we're going to get Marc here on stage now with us.
Hello there, Amanda. Thank you for having me. So yes, so today, as you said, we're going to look into Salesforce and how we can integrate some of our APIs into there. So I'm looking forward to
Excellent. So I'll give the stage to you, and I'll go here in the chat to share the links that I mentioned. Have a great session, Marc.
Brilliant. Thank you, Amanda. So I think the whole point here is hopefully most of you are here because you know of Salesforce. I just wanted to add a few words on Salesforce before we dive into it. Now, Salesforce has really become over the past probably 10 years now, one of the leading CRMs and really a tool that allows you to do everything around from sales, obviously through the Sales Cloud, Service Cloud, Marketing Cloud. There's a number of various tools. So today, very vast ecosystem. I think what the importance of what we want to show today is how easy it is. What are the moving parts that Vonage brings to the table? And that's really about the communication channels. So we're essentially a CPaaS company, communication platform as a service, and we're going to bring these channels. And the whole point is that you can integrate them into any of the tools that you feel are the most important, one of them being Salesforce. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. And what we're going to do is I'm going to take you through a couple of moving parts, and then we're going to see how all of these various parts fit together. For those of you who've already played with Salesforce, I think it's a prerequisite that you've already played with Salesforce a little. If you're discovering Salesforce today, it's going to be a rather, it's going to be a little bit hard to follow, I fear. So there you go. So I'm going to share a couple of are the various portals that we're going to look into, and then I'll show you how they all fit together. So for those of you who haven't already got a Vonage account, obviously I recommend that you get one, otherwise you will not be able to go through the session. Again, the aim today is not that you follow me through. We're not going to be able to go into that level of detail, but I'm going to show you all the parts and how they fit together. So first one is the API. Okay, so once I build once I've got a dashboard, I've built a Vonage account, I've got my API key and my API secret, and that allows me essentially to use all of the various APIs here and elsewhere. The second part I'd like to show you is that something that we released, a few years back now, and that's really, really useful. On the left-hand side here, if you follow my mouse, there's under developer tools, you've got something which is called Messages Sandbox. And Messages Sandbox is the ability to essentially test all of our features and functionality, the more advanced ones, such as WhatsApp, without having to open your own account. So here, I've got my WhatsApp phone number, which is down here, and I've got a QR code which will allow me to get in touch on the start on the WhatsApp channel. We work with API requests to send, so REST APIs in order to send messages, and then webhooks in order to receive messages. Okay, and so at the bottom here, you'll find conveniently the webhooks. Okay, so this means that if somebody sends me a message, I will be able to receive it on this inbound URL. And same for the status. If I receive the status of a message, for example, if I send a message on WhatsApp, today we're going to focus on WhatsApp, okay? And we're going to try to show you how we can send and receive WhatsApp messages directly within Salesforce. So with WhatsApp comes events, right? So for example, if I send a message and I will then get a read receipt, so when that, a delivered receipt, so when that message has been delivered to the user, as well as a read receipt, so has the message been read, and we'll show you how we can store all of that data back into Salesforce. The whole integration you'll see today revolves around this part where you'll be able to configure all of the CPaaS platforms, so sending and receiving messages, a piece of middleware, okay, which can be hosted in many different places, and today I'll be hosting it on a very good tool which is called Glitch, which I will share with you at the end, and allows you essentially to just take this code, redeploy it, and put in your own credentials, and it will all work immediately. This middleware could also be hosted within your own environment, say an AWS environment, or we have our own hosting environment, which is our serverless infrastructure, where you could deploy this in exactly the same way, so that you're not relying on any third-party providers in order to do it. Everything's managed clearly through here. And the last one, but not the least, of course, is the whole Salesforce part. Okay, so for those of you who haven't got a Salesforce account, most people, what you'll find is that when you develop inside Salesforce, you've typically got your company Salesforce, which you don't want to touch because that's the best way of getting in trouble. And then you can ask for developer instances. So for example, if I go developer Salesforce, here, sign up. Basically, from doing this, I can ask for a developer account. So I put my first name, surname, email address. You've also got a username here at the bottom. The username can be different from the email address, okay? Because email address has got to be your individual email address. The username will be whatever login that you can use. So for example, you could put Marc, Marchal, Corny, 123, yeah? And that will be the login that you'll be using. Okay, once you've got that, what it'll essentially do is it'll give you a fully deployed Salesforce environment. Okay, so you've got all of the usual suspects. You've got accounts, contacts, cases, reports, dashboards. Here, for example, we're going to look at an integration to cases today. Okay, and so for example, here I've got a case which is already open. I've got various views. I mean, you can. It's a bit of a rabbit hole, Salesforce. So lots of options there. Just to give you a couple of extra things, all of the setting up is done under here, under a button called Setup, and I'll show you. And that's this part here. And under the Setup, this is where you'll be able to configure all of the Vonage settings, etc. Okay, so we're going to take bit by bit And then we're going to show you how all of these different parts fit together. I just want to share two more other key bits of information here. One is our Vonage community GitHub, which is where all of this code is hosted today. And that's key in order to, in where we'll find all of the code, so this code, but also other code that, our Vonage DevRel team and the various CSA, so the custom solution architects team and engineers put all of their code. There's also a blog which was listed in the invite, which tells you the detail of exactly all the steps that you need to follow in order to get through this and get it working. So let's start back here. So we saw these various parts here. I'm going to show you where you can recover bits of the information that you need. So the first part that we're going to ask you to do, that you need to document, is API settings. Okay, so when I go under API settings here, you'll find my API key, my API password, which I'll change after this demo, don't worry not, and then various other little bits and items. See that these are two parts that are important. So I'm going to take these two with me, and then I'm going to go under the sandbox, and I'm going to also find this phone number here, which is the WhatsApp phone number, and I'll be able to use this in order to send and receive messages. Okay, and this is all the information that I'll need in order to, if we think from left to right, so from WhatsApp right through to Salesforce, this is the part which is closest to WhatsApp. Okay, it's then going to be calling these webhooks. Okay, so let's look at what those webhooks are. What's important to see is that Salesforce, like most CRMs today, offer a large amount of APIs so that third-party applications can come and interact with Salesforce, and that could be pushing data into Salesforce, pulling data out of Salesforce, so that essentially Salesforce can become this key repository. So let's have a look at what we're doing. So here, the aim of this is integration of WhatsApp and SMS into Salesforce using Vonage API and Node.js. So we're going to go through briefly together what this Node.js tool does. Okay, so if I click on it here, first you'll find a number of environment variables. Okay. So in the environment variables, which I will also be changing, worry not, here are the ones that you need to pay attention look out for. So you've got a consumer key, which I'll show you where it is in a minute, the consumer secret, then I've got my Salesforce username, Salesforce password, and Salesforce user security token. Okay, so these are mine. Okay, and these are the key bits because you're going to need these, because when the message comes in from WhatsApp, it's going to trigger this script here that we're going to look at together. And in turn, it's obviously got to log into Salesforce in order to push that inbound message sent by the user into Salesforce. So let's have a look at it. So this is a standard Node.js using the Express service. And if you look through it here, what you'll find is that these are all the parameters that we provide. And I'll show you where we find them in a minute, okay? But these are all the a key, secret, username, token, And we rely on something which is a JavaScript library, which is for Node, which is called JSForce, and essentially an SDK that we like them, that connects with these various credentials and allows you to interact with the APIs. If you look at it and you remember on the previous page, I defined two routes here, one which is called webhook inbound and one which is called webhook event. And this, as I said, is the inbound message and the event, the status. And these are the two that I configured in the previous portal. So let's look at the first one. We won't go to sort of the enormous amount of detail, but it's interesting to look to see how these things these things work. If I look here, first I'll connect. So I will log in with the username and the user token. Okay, this is a little trick for those who don't know it. You won't need it because it's obviously done. But the user token, is in fact the password concatenated with this user security token. Okay. So if you go here, first we'll do the login, and we'll be able to then connect, and it works with a number of instances. So we'll receive the instance so that we'll know where to send the requests. And today we support WhatsApp and SMS. Okay, so when either of these come in, we'll support them, otherwise we won't. And then this is where we create the request. Okay, so for example, when the message comes in, we're going to build essentially, we're going to pass all the information that's sent by the WhatsApp APIs, so the Vonage WhatsApp APIs on the webhooks, and we're going to reformat them to make sure that they're compatible with the objects that are inside Salesforce. So let's just look at two. Okay, so first we're going to look at the text. Okay, so this is a text message. So when a text come in, I've got a parameter called text. That was easy. Yeah, and I think actually we should, we'll have a look at it afterwards actually. So we've got a parameter called text, and this is what we're going to save as the message body, because that's what we're going to push back into Salesforce. Same if we've got an image, okay, we've got a default message just to make sure that if the image is not supported, and then we're going to actually retrieve the images. What's interesting is that when we receive an inbound message from Salesforce, in fact, we should find that. Let me just go and find this. Vonage Messages API. Oh, sorry, no, it's okay, if we come to here. This is, I recommend, this is a great source for information. If you're ever integrating any of our APIs, this is really the Alibaba's cavern, where you'll find all of the information. So for example, here I'll go under the Messages API, okay, and under the Messages API, I'll be able to look at what all the inbound messages look like, for example. Okay, so let's click on here. So this is an example. Actually, let's look under here. Actually, this is even better. Under the API references, you'll see exactly what are the messages that we receive. So if we go here, send the message or message status, this is typically the formatting of the messages that you'll receive. Okay, so inbound message, so message UID, to, from, timestamp, status. And if we look here under WhatsApp and say an image, field. Okay, this is a good example. We'll find all fields. So this is typically what we'd receive. Okay, this is on the status. Let's see where the inbound message is. Here you go. Okay, so if I receive an inbound message, this is roughly what it'll look like. Okay, so I've got the channel, WhatsApp, the to, the from. Okay, what kind of message type is it? It's an image, and I'm going to receive the message, the image, the actual image as a URL. Okay, so if you look back at this, this is what we do. We check if it's an image. If it's an image, we're going to download that image from the Vonage environment, yeah, and then we're just going to simply base 64 it to make sure that it's easy to manage, and stick it in this in the image anchors, okay, and then we're just going to push that data into Salesforce. So it's actually very simple. So if it's a message, we just push it, we move it on. If it's an image or some other media, we download it, put it into the correct anchors, and then move it on. Okay. Finally, if all is correct, then what we do, and I'll show you that in a minute, we've defined what they call custom objects within Salesforce. And what we're essentially doing is that we're rebuilding this message object. So I'm building this message object. There's a couple of fields in there: contact phone number, brand phone number, what kind of channel, the content of the message, the direction, is it in or is it out? In this case, it's in. Date, time. Something very important here, which is the Vonage message ID. Yeah, and that will allow you to track this message uniquely across our platform. And finally, the last message state. In this case, it's delivered because we've received it. Okay. I'll take the inbound event is kind of similar. Okay, so when you've got a delivered event or a read event on an outbound message, it does the same thing. It does all the checks, it logs in, and it will essentially just go and update that same entry that we've built earlier and update it with the latest status. Okay, so hopefully that's clear. So let's have a look at the last part, okay, which is actual Salesforce. Okay, so for those of you who are familiar with this, under the settings page, which I was showing you earlier, we have something called Object Manager. So what we decide to do, remember this is an open source code, which means that you can go ahead and completely change this to make it useful, to make it, to adapt it to your environment. But we've essentially got two objects here. Let's have a look at them. Okay, the first one is something which is called message history, or Vonage message history. And if you wait really patiently, we'll see what it looks like. Essentially, the message history is the object where you're going to be storing every individual message. Okay, so and all of these will be grouped together as what we call a conversation, which I'll show you in a minute. So this message history, okay, if I go into fields and relationships, okay, what you'll see is that we find all of the fields that we were looking at earlier within the integrate, the connector, because all the connector was doing was creating one of these objects with the brand number, the channel, the contact phone number, the content of the message, and a few more bits of information that auto update. Okay. Similarly, if I look at the other object here, which was of interest to us, was the conversation. So what we did essentially is that we grouped all of these actual individual messages into something called a conversation. What that means is that that conversation can be added to any element. It can be added to a case, it can be added to an account, an opportunity, all of these very common Salesforce objects. Okay, so let's just give it a second to load. Okay, excellent. So this is it. And again, if you look at what are the objects here, the objects in the fields in here, you're going to find the fields that you would need. So the first one is obviously going to be, we're going to find an account, a case, a contact, or a lead or an opportunity. And then we've got a bit of like metadata that allows us to quickly track information. So we've got brand phone number, contact phone number, channel. Okay, and this is just for allowing us to lock all these things back together. So this is kind of the core part. If you go under here, if I go back under home under my settings, and I go under, actually, I just want to step back 1 second. We've discussed about the Vonage part. We've discussed about the script. What's important is that all of these objects here that we've seen within Salesforce didn't magically appear in Salesforce. What we had to do is we had to install them. Okay, and in order to install them, if you look on this one here, which is the GitHub dedicated to the Lightning component, this is a GitHub where you'll find all of these various objects that I've started to take you through. And essentially, there's various ways of installing code within Salesforce. There's one way which is called the CLI, okay, which is called SFDX CLI. And that essentially allows you to push these files via a CLI, so via a terminal, directly into Salesforce. Or if, like me, you like the path of least resistance, then you'll find that hidden here, or it's actually on the link, on the other link, which is on the main blog. You'll find, no, it's here, so I tell that. Here, quick link that installs the package. So you basically click on this link, it says, do you want to install the package? It asks you to log in, so you put your username and your password, your Salesforce password. It then sort of goes around, does loading for a couple of minutes, and then essentially what happens is that you land in Salesforce, and all of these objects are there for you. Everything's already initialized. All of this will look exactly the way I'm showing it to you today. So really, installation, while it may have been a little bit tedious, is in fact not tedious at all, because you can just do a quick install. Okay, we'll be keeping that link up to date, as and when we bring additional features to it, we'll be able to add it. So let's have a look at the next part that I wanted to configure. The next part that I wanted to configure is obviously, there's two parts. First, there's the credentials. We'll have a look at these together. So there's something called custom settings. And here, custom settings. And once you've done the installation, what you'll find is that you've got a very convenient custom settings option here called Vonage API. And when I click on it, here I'll be able to put in all of the configuration, okay, that I wanted. So here are all the fields that we saw earlier. Yeah, some are pre-populated, some are not. I think if I click manage here, we'll be able to see exactly what they are. That's always a bit, no, sorry. Let's just try again, shall we? So I always forget where the button is. Is it manage? Oh, it's here, it's edit. Great. So here you'll find all the bits of information that we configured before. So remember when we were looking at the very beginning at the Vonage dashboard, we had API key, API secret. This is the messages API that we're using. Yeah, this is a phone number. This is the SMS URL. All of these are pre-populated other than the API key, API secret, and the phone numbers. Okay. Obviously the WhatsApp number, which is the one we saw in the dashboard initially, without the plus. The numbers don't have pluses. And finally, I've got a couple of options around the sandbox. The sandbox, the WhatsApp sandbox I showed you earlier, is actually under here, and it's pre-populated. And then you've got a little tick box here that says use use sandbox or messages API, and that would essentially toggle between using this bottom one and using this top one. In production, you would use this top one, so you'd untick it, and in the sandbox, you would obviously tick it, and it would use the bottom one. Okay, so this is where you'd set up this configuration part. So let's focus on configuration 1 second. So this is a configuration that will allow Salesforce to trigger the Vonage APIs and send those SMSs and send those WhatsApps. Okay, but if you remember carefully here, and we looked under my variables here, I'm missing a few more. Okay, and I'll show you where you can find these. So the first one is the consumer key. And remember that all of these steps may seem a bit complex, but they're all nicely described in the blog. Okay, so first one, let's look for consumer key and consumer secret. Okay, consumer key and consumer secret is configured under something called apps. Okay, so what you can do is that you can configure and build apps that will allow third-party applications to connect into Salesforce. So if you look under here, this is something that you're actually going to have to do yourself. So you would typically go under new connected app up here. Yeah, you would put in app name, app this, app that. You would enable these OAuth settings. Yeah, and just to give, I think you need a fair few of the options there. It's described in the other one. And essentially what that does, it will create that app for you. So if I look at an app that I've already built, I'll show you exactly where you can find that information. So where is it? Here you go. Vonage messaging integration. Oh, got a bit of a small screen. So there you go. Let's go edit. Now, if I go under here, this is the app which will allow me to do all the OAuth authentication. And here, where is it? No, it's not. This is where you edit it. And then if you click on the other one, it must be the view one. You'll see where you'll be able to find. Oh, it's managed. That's why. They've got this strange notion of manage. You never know exactly what it does. Important one here is that you need to have something which is called IP relaxation. So you need to make sure that we're not Salesforce isn't imposing any IP restrictions. And then where is it? Oh, Christ. Let me just. And then under the, if you look back once more, under the previous one, it must have been edit. You'll be able to find those two settings, which are the key and the security. Okay, and this is common to any type of API that you'd want to integrate into Salesforce. Great. Okay. Well, you're going to have to trust me on this. I can't remember what it is, but it's in the documentation. Those are the two fields next to the OAuth part here. You'll actually find the key and the secret, which are these two here. Okay. Then you've obviously got your username and your password. Okay, and this is going to be the username that you created in the login. Yeah, and finally, you're going to need something which is called the Salesforce User Security Token. Okay, and that's actually hiding under here, another place that you never find on your own. So if you go under here, under your little man here, or your little strange little animal, if you click here under settings, you'll be able to find on the left-hand side, these are my individual user settings. Under here, you'll find something which says reset my security token. So obviously Salesforce are hot on security, but if I click here, essentially what it does is that will send me an email with this security token. Yeah, and that is the last bit that I'll be missing here. Once I've got all those 5 bits, then the integration is ready to get working. Okay, so hopefully you're all following. It's not completely trivial. Once I've got that, I think let's have a look at what the actual environment looks like. So here I am. If I look at an example here, I've got a case. Okay, and on the left-hand side here, what I've done is I've got details and messaging. Okay, details and messaging. This is me being silly. So what I've got here is a whole UI interface, and this is what they call the Lightning component. So if you look back at the GitHub environments, this was the one here called Salesforce Lightning component that was installed via the install package. Okay, when I'm here, it will give me a whole UI. So I'll be able to put in, this is where I'll be able to send messages. This is where I'm going to be able to send it. I've got the whole history. And remember that all of this is information that's stored within Salesforce. You know, we've put the Vonage logo up there, but the whole point is that this is open source sample code. So if you want to put your own logo on there, then I'd encourage it. Yeah, go mad. So this is a quick example. Let's see how this page was built. So if I click here, edit on the top right-hand side and click edit page, okay, what you'll see is that I've essentially got a flow builder, not even a flow builder, actually, let's call it a page builder. And that page builder, essentially, when it loads, will allow me to configure the complete look and feel of this environment. Okay, so let's look at it together. Because initially that page that I showed you there with all of the messaging part is not part of the default layout. Okay, so basically how it works is that by default there are only two tabs in that bottom one. Well, let's look at it together. Okay, so it's a bit tedious. Like that. There you go. So here, if you look at it, on the left-hand side was information about the case details, the contact details, and in the middle here, I've got the feed, which will give me all of the events that took place on the call, on the case, the details of the case, and then something called messaging, which is actually the new tab that I built. I'm going to show you how we build those, okay? So here, if I click on this little element here, close this little thing here, I close on this element here, and then essentially I've got the ability to add regions. So here I've got, so it's still loading. There you go. So I've got feed details, yeah, and then I've got this messaging part here. Okay, but in fact, I could have more tabs. If I wanted to, I could add an extra tab in here. I could call messaging 2. And then once I do that, if I say, for example, should I delete it just for the sake of it? Yeah, I could delete this module. And under here on the left-hand side, under this messaging tab, I could bring another module. Okay, so in this case, if we go on the bottom here on the left-hand side, there's a module which is called Vonage Messaging. Okay, sorry. I'm not sure. And what you can do essentially is that you can drag this module over here, yeah, and that will give you the that will essentially install it. Okay, it's as easy as that. Okay, so let's go back and let's have a look at what it all looks like. Okay, and yeah, let's just wait till it loads. Okay, so here I've already got the case, for example, yeah, which I could be. So I could be just pottering around looking at various cases or doing my usual work as an agent. And then, for example, I could send a message in, hi, support. So I'm sending a message into support. And what essentially will happen, there's lots of ways you can do it, and I'll show you how you can do it. Essentially, there's something called omni-channel. Omni-channel is a pop-up here, which allows you to open it. But for those of you who may be using our VCC environment, we also have our own pop-up. So again, you can either use Salesforce pop-up, our own pop-up, your own pop-up. It really is up to you how you want to use it. We're just adding it in, okay? I'm not showing you the actual pop-up here, but it would pop up, you would click on it, it would identify the case, and then you would take straight into the case. So say, for example, I don't know, on the home page, yeah, I would get notified that there was a case. I would then click on that case, yeah, and that would take me into the specific case. So if I look at it here, I'll show you what happens if there isn't already a case open, okay, because that's obviously an important question. And I'll show you how that works, because you can completely tailor that behavior. So if I go into messaging here, I've got the hi support message, okay? And I see that this was a contact who already exists, it was called Mickey Smith, yeah? And his phone number was there. Okay, but I could also, this is somebody that I already know in my CRM, but it could be something that somebody that I don't know in my CRM. In which case, if I wanted to, I could do a very quick flow where I could ask that person's name. And similarly, hi Mark, hi Mickey, how are you? Okay, and I'd essentially be able to send that message, and similarly, I would be able to see this. In the same way, I could say, I could send a message, I could send a photo of myself because I'm narcissistic. So I'm going to send a photo. Got it. There we go. There you go. You always need a good photo of you. I am well. Okay, and the whole point is that automatically inside Salesforce, the message will come from the Vonage, the WhatsApp API that we saw, into the middleware that we saw, and will actually appear here inside the case. Okay, and then obviously the message can go on and on. So this is essentially what I'd like to show you. I think one of the extra things that I wanted to show you is the notion of flow. Okay, so you can completely customize how all of this works. Okay, in as much as when a message comes in, I could decide to have a specific flow. Maybe I want to, if I don't know him in the database, I want to do a special action before I want to query something else, or I want to ask him his name or whatever that may be. So for that, Salesforce has got something which they call flows, okay? And flows essentially allows you to build all of these interactions directly from this environment. So if I go click here, I do edit. Okay, what you'll find is that using all of the inbuilt logic, yeah, sorry, it's not there, 1 second. We're using all of the inbuilt logic within Salesforce, this kind of drag and drop environment. I'll be able to edit. So if I open the last one, so these are all of the various ones. So I've had a couple of iterations of this. The last one is the active one. And this is the one that will get deployed with the when you click that install button. But let's look at it together because it really shows you how easy it is to do it. Because if you think about it, all of the logic actually happens within the Salesforce. Okay, so when the message comes in, it's a message from WhatsApp, it gets pushed into Salesforce. All of the logic and how I deliver it happens here. So for example, here, the message comes in. And then here, I'm going to check, do I already have a conversation? Remember that kind of global element that allows you to associate all the conversations? And then I'm going to check it under here and go, is there a conversation or not? If there isn't one, then I'm going to build it. If there is one, then I can very quickly associate it to that case, to that conversation, which is in turn associated to a case. And then I can notify the front end. Okay, did you see that all of my page updated automatically? That's because we're using this WebSocket functionality within Salesforce. Similarly, if it's not already built, then I build it. And then if I've built a conversation, then I want to check if a contact exists. Okay, so do I know this contact within Salesforce? And it may be that I don't know him, in which case I could ask the customer back. I go, what's your first name? We've never heard of you before. What's your first name? What's your surname? And then I could go and create a contact here, which is what I'm doing here essentially. Here I'm saying, do I know the contact? No, I don't know him. Let's create him. And then we put him back through the flow. So now I have a contact, and I go, right, well, do I have a case for this new conversation that's starting? If there is a case, obviously I don't create it and I keep on going. If there is a case, if there isn't a case, then I create it and then I keep on going. So the whole point is that I can completely configure all of the exchanges of messages within this environment. And on the top of that, I could add additional flows. So when a message comes in, currently we would trigger the omni-channel flow. Okay, so how it works is that it would detect there's a new message, the conversation is seen as needing to be treated. We notify the inbuilt queuing mechanism within the Salesforce omni-channel, and it gets delivered using the standard logic within Salesforce. So again, so for those of you who already have that type of functionality, that routing functionality, you can reuse it exactly as is. It's just another element, another task that's being treated. Okay, so hopefully most of you have followed. There's a lots of moving parts, but what I'd like to, I think I'm going to kind of close at this point. So I think what I'd like to remind you is a couple of points. Okay, the first one is under here. Okay, if I log in again, what you'll find, this is the Vonage dashboard. And from the Vonage dashboard, you'll be able to set all these things up, find all the credentials that you will need in order to send messages from Salesforce, and also configure those webhooks, those callbacks within either a production WhatsApp account or a sandbox production account. So if you want to test this tomorrow, the sandbox account is ideal for you. And you'll find it under here on the left, under developer tools, messages sandbox. Okay, then you had this middleware. Okay, and the middleware is all of the messages that come in from WhatsApp are then passed through this in order to be authenticated, secured, and pushed back into Salesforce. Okay, and here what we found is that there are a number of credentials that you need to recover from the Salesforce environment and push into here. Okay, and store in here so they can push it. Remember, this can be hosted here in a typical kind of hosted environment like Glitch, but it can also be hosted in your infrastructure, or we have a serverless infrastructure that I recommend you have a look at. It's very, very good. Okay, find it. This is more visual, which is why I've chosen this today. But in a production environment, I would recommend ours, which allows you to host this on our own environment with a 99.99% time uptime. Okay, and finally, we saw Salesforce. Okay, and in the Salesforce environment, we saw how we've got the notion of history, the notion of conversation. Finally, in this case, we chose to integrate it into cases. We saw how we had to drag and drop, and we can drag and drop this UI into any one of these elements. And with the configuration that was set up under custom configuration, you were able to then to send the messages. Okay, so hopefully that was beneficial. Remember, as again, all of the links, the blog is detailed in the in the blog. You'll find all the information, including all the links to the GitHub, including very clear instructions on how to do the installation. Yeah, and within and again, if you've got any questions, do reach out. Me and all of our team at Vonage, we're here to help in any integrations that you'd like to get done. Okay, Amanda, are you? What are the? Do you want to share anything? Do you want to maybe share those various links again on how to get in touch with the developer relations? Super.
Yes, I can definitely do that. And we have a question here. If we could have the question popped up here. Hi there. Will there be a recording of this webinar after it is complete? Yes, it's going to be available for you on YouTube. So I'm dropping the links here again. So if you'd like to do it in your own time. So we have the link, as Marc said, to the blog post and to the two GitHub repos. And if you have any questions, you can always talk to us in all the channels that we are there. We are on Twitter. I think maybe I could put that slide up again if I haven't closed it with all of our social. So I'll just share one now. This is our Twitter if you need us. And we also have a Vonage Slack community that I'll share with you right this minute. Thank you very much for your time, Marc.
A pleasure. A pleasure.
It's so cool the amount of things that you can do so easily. Like here in under an hour, you showed us how we could get everything working, even the webcam.
Exactly. And I think that's the whole point of APIs. If you think about where all the industry is going, the ability through microservices and APIs to go and pick up information in some parts, push them back into other parts, and essentially store that data in one place so that you can then trigger future automation. What I didn't show today was the ability to, from all of these, by installing this integration, you can also automate SMS outbound notifications. So straight from a ticket, a ticket could jump from a state of standard to escalated, and that would update, that could send, as many SMSs out to the various people involved. So it'll deal with notification, conversation, and again, maybe as part of a second webinar that we can maybe run during the summer, we'll focus on also Marketing Cloud, where we'll show you how you can send messages outbound for marketing purposes and maybe deal with them in an automated way, either via Salesforce or via our dedicated, kind of low-code AI studio.
I'm looking forward to that webinar. Let's see if people are interested in that as well. Yeah, but that's the idea. You show them, you show them in under an hour so many things that they can do, and now they see the resources that they can use in their own products, in their own solutions. We have so many. We're dropping them here. Everyone is very happy with your workshop. Thank you very much, Marc.
A pleasure. I'm looking forward to do the next one. I'm on a mission.
Very good. So thank you, and thank you everyone for your time. And we'll see you on the next one, maybe.
Excellent. Thank you. Bye-bye all. Thank you for listening.
Bye, everyone.